Vance is different. He's a lot less libertarian. He's less adventurous on foreign policy, a little more nationalist, and he's sort of future-oriented.
Welcome to The Debrief, where we talk with the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the headlines they're covering and where the story's going next. I'm Sarah Bedford, and I'm here with senior columnist Tim Carney. And Tim, Vice President J.D. Vance has been really front and center for a lot of these early weeks of the Trump administration. So President Trump was asked recently whether he views J.D. Vance as a successor to this ideological movement. Trump was kind of non-committal on that, wasn't he?
Yeah, he said no. He didn't say definitely no, but he said no, we don't really have a successor. We got to leave that open. Now, some people saw this as a slight to J.D. Vance, and certainly Donald Trump is not somebody who likes to share attention or credit. So there is certainly, if you want to psychoanalyze the president, that's one explanation, is that I'm the guy, focus on me, we're taking care of this stuff now. But on the other hand, his answer was sort of a good conservative answer. It's like, we got to leave that question for the future. We're not going to try to plan stuff out, and I'm not going to try to pick the next person. And that's very different from what the Democrats have done the last couple cycles.
Do you think there is, you say that, conservatives don't play 4D chess, they're not supposed to be central planning, but do you think there could be some strategy behind that? Because if Donald Trump were to endorse J.D. Vance this early, for example, he'd be putting a target on Vance's back in some ways, right?
He'd be putting a target on his back, but also I really do think one of the lessons from what the Democrats have gone through in the last 16 years is that you shouldn't try to sort of force things on people. Democrats always talk about democracy, democracy, democracy. Obama picked a vice president who he didn't really think was ready to be president. He was already really old, Biden.
Right.
and then push Biden out of the way to set up everything for Hillary. And if you remember, the DNC rigged everything for Hillary over Bernie, and that ended up backfiring. And so then the Dems picked Biden. They basically rigged it for Biden so that because he's a guy who could defeat Trump. He was a guy who could defeat Trump, but then he tried to run again. That was a disaster. And then instead of having an open primary, he just went ahead and single-handedly picked Kamala, and that was a disaster. So this whole thing of, well, let the smart people pick instead of leaving it up to messy democracy, messy processes. A lot of liberal columnists also thought it was a good idea. It's not a good idea. It hasn't worked for the Dems, and it would be the smart thing, even if you think Vance is the best one, to say, let him try to go ahead and beat the other Republicans who are out there, Ron DeSantis, etc.
Do you think that Vice President Vance is well-positioned to be that successor? What would the challenges for him be?
I mean, I think he's very well-positioned because he's young, and for some reason, it's part of American culture to skip Generation X. When people list off the generations, they're like the World War II people, the boomers, and then they go right down to millennials. And so if we did that politically, it would not be shocking. But he's young, he's conservative, he's a new brand of conservative, not sort of the Reagan era. Romney, Paul Ryan, a lot of those people were sort of Reagan Republicans. Vance is different. He's a lot less libertarian. He's less adventurous on foreign policy, a little more nationalist, and he's sort of future-oriented. Like, all of a sudden, he busted out a talk on artificial intelligence.
Right.
And I was like, how does he know this stuff? And then I realized he's not an old guy like me. And I think that will be advantageous, and that will help the Republicans continue to win the young voters. He's obviously got downsides. He's got tough competitors. I mentioned DeSantis as an obvious one. But he definitely does. It's very plausible that he can claim to be the future of the GOP.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for being here today. You can get more writing from Tim and the rest of the commentary team at washingtonexaminer.com.